So welcome to week 2 of operations management course. In this week, I'm going to teach you the first chapter of the textbook. The focus will be to understand about the basics of operations management and how to calculate productivity. So these are the different objectives for this particular chapter. First, we will define operations management. I will help you to understand the difference between the goods and services. Then I will try to indicate what's the difference between production and productivity. We will do some examples to understand the calculation of single factor productivity. I will also introduce multi-factor productivity. Then we will try to understand the critical variables that can be used for enhancing productivity. So to start with the definition part of it, remember that normally when you hear the word operations management, in earlier days, so say for example before 2005, people, or 20 years back, people always used the word called as production management in the place of operations management, because when this particular technique was created, it was generally applied to the goods industry. It was generally applied to the manufacturing processes. So people used to refer to things as production management. But in the last few years, the number of the techniques which have been applied to service industry has drastically increased. So we no longer use the word called as production management. So in a simple way, operations management can be considered as this set of things which we do in a business to add value to the items which we are making. For example, I can call it as the value addition process. So operations management is actually the management of this value addition process when we are trying to convert any input to the output. So remember the example of Amazon, which I have seen. So in the case of Amazon's one-day delivery, which we have seen, the value addition has been how quickly the material can be delivered to the customer. The same way we looked at the case of Toyota, and we saw the example of how Toyota was able to create the things better than Ford. So that the operations management in that particular case refer to creating better quality cars with no defects. So the no defect was the thing which Toyota sort of focused on, that we refer to as the lean management in the video, which if you want to look at it again, please go to the week 1 video. So what is important is operations management is always a set of things which we do, set of activities which we do, so that there is a value addition on the material which we are manufacturing or the service which we are providing. So this particular block diagram I have shown in the week 1's lecture as well. So this is the block diagram of supply chain management. So in supply chain management, we deal with the full set of activities from the suppliers to the final customer. And the operations management, or the operations, is generally restricted to this particular region. So think of a car manufacturing company, like say Toyota. It will get inputs from, it will get different raw materials from various suppliers. So some examples could be, say, steel, it could be tire, it could be engine, it could be glass, it could be seats, it could be electronics, and so on. So once these different materials have come to the factory, the various things which are being conducted inside this particular factory, so that a value added item. Value added item in the case of Toyota is the different models of cars which they are manufacturing. So that's shown as the outputs. So this is where the operations is happening. Operations refer to this value addition process from inputs to the outputs. Now, once the cars are being manufactured, they have to be sent to the different showrooms, the different locations from where the customers can go and purchase them. So we will not be looking at this part of it, how the customer is going and purchasing. We will also not be discussing about the supplier selection process. So those things come under the supply chain management. Our focus in this course is going to be restricted to this part: input, operations, and output. So going forward, some of the quick things which you can think of why we should study operations. I know that you are experts in the accounting aspects of it. You are experts in analyzing numbers, but it is very important to understand how goods and services are generally produced. And it is also important to understand how people work in a productive enterprise. So if you want to make an organization productive, what are the good things, what are the best practices that are available so that you can make the organization more productive. The same way, we are interested to understand what are the various resources which we should look for in the case of any business. It's also important because this is the most important thing. The operations are generally going to consume a huge amount of cost. They are the main cost driver in many organizations. So we should have a good understanding of operations. So if we are comparing, say, two different manufacturing industries, two different automotive industries, they may get the same set of raw materials. They will have the same set of things coming in from from the same set of suppliers as well. But what makes one company better than the other company is how well their operations are taking place. So this is the reason why this is a very important cost driver. That's the reason why we are focusing so much on operations management. So to give you an example how this is going to work, so look at this case wherein you have all the necessary things for a current situation. So currently the sales is around 100,000 and the cost of goods sold, COGS, is around 80,000. So when you look at all these things, and based on this calculation, you can see that the contribution is around 10,000, right? So around $10,000 is the contribution which we are having. Now we are trying to look at three different possible scenarios. In the first scenario, we are looking at from a marketing perspective. I'm trying to increase my sales revenue by 50%. Let's see what's going to happen. In the second case, because that's what the marketing is always focusing on. Case 2 is from an accounting perspective. So in this case, there is a finance cost here. So let's say that it's the interest which you are paying on some loan which you have taken. Or so from an accounting perspective, you are trying to have this number adjusted. You're trying to reduce the finance cost by 50%. And the third option is you're trying to reduce the production cost. That's the COGS. You're now trying to reduce it by 20%. So this is just a hypothetical example, but this will show how three different attributes in any business, be it marketing, be it finance, or be it operations, how these three things can influence the bottom line of the business. So let's try to understand here. So in this case, when you're trying to increase the sales by 50%, so 100,000 has become 150,000. But if you want to sell this many products, your COGS also will increase. So in the place of 80,000, it has gone to 120. And when you look at the other numbers here, your contribution has jumped from 10,500 to 18,000. So an increase in selling by 50% has changed your contribution from 10,500 to 18,000. Now let's see what has happened when I'm reducing my finance cost by 50%. So it was in the place here 6,000, has dropped to 3,000, all the other things remaining same. My contribution has jumped to 12,750. Now let's look at the case. I'm not changing anything with my marketing. I'm not changing anything to my revenue, but I am trying to play around with my costs. So that's where I have my control on. That's within my factory, within my company. So I can try to find out the best practices and try to make things far more efficient. If I try to do that, if you see here, and if I'm successful in reducing my production cost by 20%, what has happened is 80,000 has dropped to 64,000, which has resulted, nothing else has basically changed here. The contribution has increased to 22,500. So this is something which is very important to understand, because the other two things, for example, the looking for reducing the finance cost as well as your marketing aspects, they are influenced by factors outside your control, because if there are not many customers, it's not very easy. The same is the case with if the economy is not favoring a better interest option. These are influenced by external factors, but an operational perspective, the thinking, the excellence or operational excellence is within the organization. We are trying to make things far more effective. Now, by this process, it is in most cases it is possible to achieve because the influence from external sources are limited, and there is a huge impact on the bottom line of the business. So this is just to show the typical organization structure, because you will be knowing that each organization will have, say, sales, they have their marketing team, they will have their operations team, accounting, HR, and so on. Now, in this operations, as I said, we defined operations management as a value addition process. We are going to consider a set of activities that add value to the organization. So we will be discussing multiple aspects in this particular topic, not restricted to one or two. We will be dealing with the design, quality, process, location, and so on. So these are the 9 different areas which are the key drivers within the operation. So these are, we try to look at some of these things in detail, so that when you know, this can be applied for any industry for that matter. When you try to understand the implication of each of these aspects, you become a knowledgeable in these areas, then there is a scope for you to add more value to your organization. So I just try to show here. So there are multiple types of jobs which are there in operations. Say, for example, it can be a production supervisor, it can be in quality, it can be in supply chain manager, project manager, and so on. So just trying to say that these things are being distributed. So I'm not going to read out everything in the slides, but the various decision areas are being presented in each chapter. So we will be covering some of these in this particular semester. We'll be discussing on the goods, we'll be discussing on the quality management, process capability design, and then location strategy, layout, human resource I might not be touching much, and supply chain, and so on. Inventory we are going to study. We are going to study a little bit on the scheduling as well. So we will be touching upon many of these decision areas, which at the end will add value to the organization. So now we will enter into the second learning objective of this particular chapter, to understand the difference between goods industry and a service industry. So you can think of these things very easily. So any item, any product, say computers or mobile phone or car or anything which is being manufactured, we can call them as a good, because these items are tangible, you can touch them, you can feel them, and almost always you can think of, say, if I purchase a mobile phone, let's say Apple, the mobile phone, this is iPhone 11. So iPhone 11, when I purchase any iPhone 11, if I am purchasing from anywhere in the world, I will have the same specification. There will always be a consistency in the product. And it's always important to understand in the case of a goods industry. So we go to a particular shop and purchase the phone, but we really do not know where this particular product has been manufactured. So we are not really buying it from the factory, right? So that's what is called as production and consumption. They usually do not happen at the same time. What it means is things are being produced at a certain location in the world, at the factory, then it is being made available at the different stores. So the production and consumption is like the people going and purchasing. That's what it means. And it can be kept in as inventory. Inventory refers to the stock that you can hold. So mobile phone is an item that can be kept as a stock. So, and there is low customer interaction. What it means is whenever Apple is manufacturing this particular phone, they are not going to ask the customer whether they want to have it in this way or they want to have it in some other way. No, the interaction which happens with the customer is limited. But in the case of a service industry, so think of the example, right? You are going to a dentist, or you are going to for example, a fine dining restaurant and then having your food. So in this part, these are the service industries, or even the case of getting the mail daily at home, or even the education. So it's an intangible product. Now, in general, it is always produced and consumed at the same time. What it means is, for a dentist to do that particular, say, root canal therapy, the patient has to be there and the dentist also has to be there at the same time. And in most cases, the same is the case with barber, the same is the case with anything which we can think of as service. In most cases, it is like a unique thing, because if you're doing a root canal therapy, so that's what a dentist is doing, then it depends on the condition of the person's, say, tooth. It's going to be more unique, and there's going to be a higher level of customer interaction. There is no consistent product definition, the way in which, say, the same is the case with the food as well. So there is nothing like this is the taste I want. So if you're going to a fine dining restaurant, then the chances are that you'll have a better unique experience, and there is nothing like a frequent, like consistent definition which happens. So this is, please understand, the basic difference between a goods industry and a service industry. Now, do I say these things? Always remember that every industry which you can think of will have some service component as well as some goods component in it. So what I mean to say is, so even though education is generally, let's say, considered as a service industry, but there are components like, say, textbooks, there are components like the slides which you are getting. So these things are really, you can take the printout of it, you are getting the case studies, say for example, you are getting various things, you write the exams. Now there is a goods component as well. So service industry doesn't necessarily mean the absence of goods. The same is the case with a goods industry. Think of a Nissan or Toyota as an example. It's really a goods industry which manufactures, say, the cars. Now, what's the service component in that particular industry? So think of the insurance, or maybe like the loan, the lease periods, the things which happen when you go to purchase a new car. The salesperson gives you like the option of taking the test drive, the option of explaining the various features in the car. So these are like the services which you are getting. So though car manufacturing is considered as a goods industry, there is a component of service in it. So always remember that there is no pure goods industry or no pure service industry. There is always a certain percentage of goods and a certain percentage of service in each of the industries. Now, we are now jumping on to the last topic in this particular course, in this particular chapter, wherein we are going to discuss about the difference between production and productivity. And I will show you some examples in this slide. And when we meet during our Zoom lecture meetings, that's where I'm going to discuss these examples in detail. Now, remember that production is, so when I say that production is the word I'm using, I'm always referring only to the output. So that means, say, 100 mobile phones made today. I don't discuss anything how efficiently I have made it, but productivity always deals with efficiency. I cannot just say that the 100 mobile phones are made. I should say 100 mobile phones are made, say, per hour, or 100 mobile phones are made per day, or whatever. So this is very important. So production is not dealing with inefficiency, whereas productivity is always dealing with efficiency. So it's a measure of efficiency. So the primary business objective is always to increase or improve the productivity. So if you want to improve, so that's what operations managers are paid for. If you are an operational excellence consultant, see, so some examples are like a Six Sigma consultant. So whenever I go to a factory, I always try to look for the areas where things can be improved. And so for doing that particular thing, this is the starting item. This is the starting thing which I always look at. I always try to look at the existing value of the productivity. Then I try to take a target productivity. Let's say today I am making, say, 100 mobile phones per hour. So that's my baseline. Now the next question is there a possibility of increasing the productivity from 100 per hour to say 150? So I want to increase by 50%, so 150 mobile phones per hour. So this is how we try to work in operations management. So this is an example just trying to showcase how, for example, in Starbucks, when you go to Starbucks, so, or Tim Hortons, how can you improve the productivity? So this has been a small example which has been mentioned. So you try to look for avenues wherein the wastage of time and the wastage of resources can be eliminated. So some examples have been mentioned here. So nowadays, for example, no one is putting the signature on the credit card. So this was one of the things which they did around 10 years back. Say, for example, if it is less than $25, there is no need for signature, the customer to stand and put the signature. Now, this is one of the ways in which they have been able to improve their operations. When we say operational improvement, we think always in terms of the productivity. So increasing the productivity is one of the key indicators of operational improvement practices. So to start with, as I said, productivity, it always is used for measuring the process improvement. So you need to have a ratio. You need to find out an output. There is an input. You try to take the ratio of that output divided by the input will help you to measure productivity. Now, we define two different types of productivity. One is called as a one-factor productivity or single-factor productivity, or multi-factor productivity. I'll show the examples of this. For example, if I am looking at the effectiveness of the labor productivity. So labor is the hours the workers are putting in my factory. If I am just interested in finding out, say, for example, I have 2 people working in my factory each day, and they are putting in, each of them put for around, say, 10 hours daily. So 20 hours is the total time they are putting. Now I'm trying to check how many products they are making each day. So this can give me an indication of my labor productivity. Say, for an example here, There's a manufacturing company that manufactures, say, produces around 1,000 go-kart tires each day, and we know there is labor. So for making an item, you need people. You also need the raw materials for that. You need energy, right? You need, say, for making tire, you need some raw materials, say rubber. You need energy. For example, you need to have the power, you need to have the hydro for that, and you should have a space for making it. So you need certain aspects, attributes for making your tires. Now, if our question is to find out only the labor productivity rate, so labor productivity is a single factor. We are just, though there are 4 factors which are important in this case, we are looking at a single factor. So the labor productivity would be 1,000 divided by 400. So that's what we are doing. The number of units that are produced divided by the labor hours. So 1,000 divided by 400 will be 2.5. So I make 2.5 tires per hour per labor hour. So this is what is the existing productivity of my factory. Now, if you are interested in finding out, say we are not going to do numerical examples from multi-factor productivity, but understand if my interest is to find out the productivity with respect to the various factors, like, so the factors such as in the previous example, so labor, raw material, energy, and so on. So what we are going to do is, we have now multiple resources in this case. We are interested in trying to find out what is the total productivity. So when you're trying to do a multi-factor productivity, it's always important to understand that, because the labor is, working time is expressed in hours, the raw material is expressed in terms of the kilograms. So it's important to have a consistent unit. So what we always do is, the outputs as well as the inputs we express in terms of the dollar value. So the productivity then can be defined as the output dollar value divided by, say, labor, material, energy, capital, etc. All of them expressed in terms of the dollar value. So what it means is, if I spend this much dollars in my business, I get, say, for example, I spend $100 each day or $1,000 each day on a particular business, and my output is, say, $1,200. So that's my output. So when I take this particular ratio, I know what's my overall productivity of my factory. When you look at the overall productivity, you will be having all the different attributes, say labor, material, and so on. And you can try to work upon these factors and try to improve upon your productivity. So sometimes the multi-factor productivity is called as a total factor productivity. As I said, we are not going to do much of numerical examples in this particular thing, but just to give an indication here. So if you are just looking here, the multi-factor productivity, 1,000 units is being produced each day. Now, if I'm trying to look at for a particular day, correct? If I'm just trying to add up all the things, we will not do it, but just trying to understand, $400 hours per day is being spent. So the dollar value will be 400 multiplied by 12.5. So that will be the total cost of the labor. Now 20,000 pounds per day, right? So 20,000 into 1 is 20,000, 5,000 plus 10. So 10,000 plus 5 is 15,000 plus 20,000 is 35,000, and another 5,000 comes from the labor. So I take this ratio, I get how many tires am I making for each dollar that I am spending. So this is how I can use and calculate my multi-factor productivity. So single factor productivity and multi-factor productivity. So multi-factor is also not very complicated to do the calculations. So this gives an indication that for every dollar I spend, how many tires I'm making. Now the last bit of it is called as a service productivity. So in the example of the tire manufacturing, it was very much easy to calculate the labor rate as well as the other aspects like say raw materials. But in the case of a service productivity, say think of going to a dentist or going for a haircut. Now, it is not very easy to define this particular thing, this productivity, because it is almost always dependent on the taste of the person who is having it. So it's unique. As a result, it is almost always very difficult to evaluate the quality. So these are very important things to remember when you speak about service productivity and the productivity which we have seen earlier. So with this, we are finishing off our first chapter. So we started our discussion with operations. Remember, it's a value added function which helps to create your goods and services. We studied this particular thing because it's a major cost driver for any firm. And this has been there for quite some time. So whatever we are studying in this particular course are the tips for helping you to improve any organization. So these are all proven best practices. And remember that in Canada, more than 3/4 of the workforce is in the service sector. So if you actually become familiar with the principles which we are studying in this course, you can add great value to your employer. So that's all from my side for chapter 1. Thank you so much.